Hi. Well, last time we were together, we spent some time talking about looking at the impact of electric energy generating capability in the Ohio River Valley. There's another one. This is a rather old one, but it's of interest because I was involved with this one as well. And it has to do with an idea that was promoted I think in the 60s. The gentleman that wanted to do this got started. The way he eventually was able to move this idea forward to put a bunch of solar cells, basically in a large field, in a geosynchronous orbit, about 40,000 kilometers off the surface of the Earth, because the sun's always shining up there. There are no clouds. He spent a lot of time wandering around the halls of government in our country. There was a time when I was teaching at Purdue. I also worked for the dean's office. Every once in a while, I would go into an office or walk down the hall of a building, and I'd run into this fellow who was promoting the idea of this solar-powered satellite. And this was in the early 70s when I was doing this, and it was kind of fascinating. Yeah, it was two things. One was there was always a guy from MIT there trying to look for work, and also this gentleman trying to promote his idea to get some governmental support. Well, he eventually succeeded, and here was the idea, and I'd like to talk about it and give you the results of a social impact assessment, which they did. It turned out that this, what they call the SPS program, Solar Powered Satellite program, it was the first time that a major technology program focused not just on the key technology itself, but was concerned with the evaluation of environmental effects and comparative economic factors and social issues. And so they worked with close to 3,000 citizens around the United States, and they gave them data like we talked about from their technological impact assessments or technology assessments, to get their reaction. Say, hey, is this a good thing to do or not? And if it's not, why not? And if it's good, why is it good? And so that's the project we're going to look at. And I'll give you some ideas to the size of this project and how it was put together, so you'll see in a very quick way. So this solar field was going to be big enough that it could produce 5 gigawatts of electric energy on the Earth. So it would be an immense solar field collecting energy from the sun and beaming that energy down to the Earth. And they were going to beam it down using microwaves. So they had a big microwave antenna on the Earth to collect that energy, which then would go out to various grids, just like it does now from a power plant. And so 5 gigawatts is like having 5 giant 1,000 megawatt generators, and those are very large, and 1,000 megawatts will take care of a fairly good-sized community and its associated businesses and industry. So it's a significant amount of energy. Well, anyway, let me show you a picture of the immensity of this device, and you'll see that it's a fairly good size. For example, the array is 10 kilometers long and 5 kilometers wide. So that's a few miles. And the framework on which these solar cells would rest is roughly about 470 meters. So you have this huge platform, which relative to its area is pretty thin. When you figure 10 kilometers versus half a kilometer, really. On the end of it is a device that takes the direct energy that comes off the solar cells, converts it to microwaves, and beams it down into the Earth. And you can see on the diagram that This kind of oval-shaped device is in the area of 10 kilometers by 13 kilometers in size. So it's a big antenna. And how were they going to build this thing? Well, what they were going to do is they'd have rocket ships go to an intermediate or low-level Earth orbit, do all the assembly there, and then after it was assembled, then move it on up into its orbit at 40,000 kilometers. Well, what are some of the concerns just thinking about that? Well, one is, gee whiz, you got all these rocket ships coming up, so there was concern about pollution of the atmosphere just from rocket exhaust. And you can imagine the costs will be high, and there's a certain amount of risk to the humans that are involved, and so on and so forth. And so it sounds kind of neat, but when one looks at it, the question was, how do people feel about this? And so what I'd like to do is just take a few minutes and give you a review for you, some of the comments and some of the aspects that came out of the social impact assessment. In other words, again, the public took the data that came from the technical people and said, gee whiz, knowing the economics, knowing this is microwaves and how strong the beam is and how much area it's going to take and how you're going to build it and how many rocket ships it's going to take and how many trips and how much pollution and all those kind of things and how much money and so on. Now that I see that, which hasn't happened yet, but it's kind of an idea, so what will happen, the best guess we can make, how do I feel about that as a group? And as I said, they had 30,000 individuals involved, including organizations. They had environmental and consumer groups. They had solar businesses, which of course could benefit from this, and various citizen groups. So they tried to, and local government, so they tried to have a fairly wide spectrum of interests that would be both affected and benefit by this process. Well, it turned out that a certain number of the respondents were in favor of the project. And this actually incorporated a group of people that were very space-oriented and thought this would be a great thing to do. And then they had a majority of people, though, that didn't like it at all. They didn't think it was worthwhile. What were some of the reasons that, in general, that the people were opposed to this? Well, they were opposed because of environmental impact. They seemed to be concerned about health effects. The economics, they didn't like that. Another thing that was kind of fascinating, they were concerned about the centralization of power, because so much energy was being developed from this one organization. And also because government was so involved, they were concerned about more government involvement in local affairs, which they did not think would be a good thing. And they also thought it was kind of a veiled attempt for some military reasons to have this huge energy source out in space, which I suppose you could say, well, they could turn their microwave beam and convert it into lasers or whatever and use it for military reasons in wiping out other satellites or for whatever military activities you could think of. Probably the one thing that affected people the most was concern for the microwaves. We all have microwave ovens and things get cooked, and people thought, holy cow, we've got this very powerful beam of microwaves coming down to Earth. What happens if a bird flies in there, somebody flies their airplane through it, whatever the case may be, and they were really concerned about that. They also felt that, look, we're spending all this money on this big project, this one big project. It's too big. If it gets terrorists or whatever go after it, they could destroy it, and that would have a profound impact on our electric generation. Wouldn't we be better off with smaller, decentralized, renewable energy systems like wind, solar at the local level, and conservation, take the same amount of money, put it toward that kind of activity, we'd be better off, and the environment would be improved, centralization issues would be put aside, military concerns would be put aside, and actually energy security would be enhanced, and local businesses could be more involved in this sort of thing than in a large major project. Because they also felt that there would be an impact, because big projects require big business in many cases, even though the big businesses put jobs out to the smaller ones. They felt that small business would really suffer, and that would be a problem. And lastly, and we'll close with this, they were concerned also as to whether this would become an international cooperative deal. And if it was, would all that international involvement really be a good thing? Because we tend to like to run our own ship and not be concerned with what people over the other side of the ocean are telling us to do. The one really positive thing that came out of this, strong, loud and clear, was that the citizens really appreciated and wanted to encourage the government more to allow them to have a say about how things go and what their concerns were for government-sponsored projects, which really tended to affirm the idea that social impact assessment is really a very valuable thing to do. And so I'd like to leave you with that thought. We've looked at two cases. I realize that's electrical energy, but we could do the same thing with regard to cell phones, designer children, use of robotic soldiers in warfare, and the like. And we'll touch on that issue here shortly. So keep this in mind, and wherever you are, as you're trying to live your ethic and you want to bring about change, use the impact assessment, technology and social, however you can, to bring about the data you need to make as best intelligent decision you can as to whether you're supporting or opposing or want to control or make a modification in the introduction of a given technology into society. Next time we get together, we'll talk a little bit more about how people behave and why they do through Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. So till then, bye for now.